Episode number 174 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. My guest today is Jenna Hua. Jenna's extensive experiences as an academic and health advocate led to her founding Million Marker in 2019, shortly after completing a postdoctoral fellowship with Stanford University's School of Medicine. Throughout her career in academia, Jenna has researched and published numerous studies that largely focused on citizen science, general health, and the impact of food consumption on a person's well-being. In her most recent publications, Jenna used machine learning to identify people based on food consumption in order to offer healthier food options. She also published another report that studied the arsenic exposure and risk of eating rice within adolescents in Kunming, China. Jenna has been a project manager for UNC's Carolina Population Center, a graduate instructor and research assistant at UC Berkeley, and a project manager at UCLA's Center for Population Research. She was also a US Fulbright Fellow at the Institute of International Education in Kunming, China. Jenna holds a BS in Nutrition, an MPH and PhD in Environmental Health Sciences from UC Berkeley. So welcome to the podcast, Jenna.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for having me. I'm super excited.
So you have quite an impressive resume. You have so much amazing information, and I'm really excited to pick your brain. Before we start, I'd love to have you introduce yourself and give us your background.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenna. I'm the founder and CEO of Million Marker. We're a health tech company that's trying to provide a direct-to-consumer environmental toxin test to people so you can actually measure what's inside of you and take actions and reduce your toxin load and improve health and wellness.
And what got you to do this? Like, what inspired you to start this company?
So I started a company. I was an academic for a long time. I completed my undergrad in nutrition. I was a dietitian for a while in the hospital. Nobody listens to me. So I decided to go back to school and study environmental health. It was through my research, I realized that, there's so many things we're exposed to these days, but there's really a tangible and personalized way to actually measure what we're being exposed to. Mm-hmm. There are over 80,000 chemicals in use today, but we only actually have about 1% with sufficient safety data. Mm-hmm. And if you talk about how chronic disease actually happens, genetics actually only accounts for about, less than 30% of your chronic disease risk. The rest of them are from your environment, from your lifestyle mostly, mm-hmm. from the exposure to toxic chemicals, the air pollutants, water, food, you name it. Mm-hmm. And also your social environment too. So all these factors really impact our wellness. Mm-hmm. But again, there's just like no tools for everyday consumers to actually measure like what we're being exposed to and do something about it. Yes. So I was very frustrated with this fact when I was in academia, and also frustrated that we don't even have data to study these environmental exposures, mm-hmm. because these exposures we're talking about, you get exposed to a very small amount, a little bit here, a little bit here, right there. But it's like repeated exposure day in and day out. So you just don't know when your cups gets full. Mm-hmm. And we have no data to study that. Like, we're also being exposed to like multiple chemicals, multiple things at a time, but we have been studying these things like one chemical at a time. Right. So I was very frustrated in my career, and I felt the impulse of putting together a service so that people can actually understand what's going on mm-hmm. with their body and do something about it. That's like more on the professional side. On the personal side, I also had a lot of fertility struggle myself. Mm-hmm. I had two super rare genetic condition that only happens during pregnancy, and the doctors weren't able to diagnose me until my fourth super late stage pregnancy loss.
Oh,
And
wow.
each time they just told me like, good luck next time, because I studied these things and I
Oh my
know it
gosh.
could be, a reason. But when I
Mm-hmm.
went to the doctor, they were like, I asked like, okay, is there a environmental test other than heavy metal that I can take? Because
Yeah.
I know about heavy metal, but they were like, okay, the only thing available is heavy metal. So I was also very frustrated with that, because we know fertility has been declining. Women are having kids later, and then a lot of my friends all had kind of some kind of issues during pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like, this is something that you can take action and protect your unborn child, improve your fertility.
Yeah.
Really simple stuff, but we just don't have the tools. So anyway, long-winded answer. That's why I
No,
started the company.
it's actually good information. I'm sure so many people listening to this right now are really like wanting to find out more because it can be extremely frustrating. Like you use the perfect word because people don't know where to start. There are so many different things. I mean, frustrating, to begin with is the fact that some of these things aren't banned in this
Mm-hmm.
country where they're banned in so many other countries, and
Right,
it's
right.
okay to use them, here. And and it hides out in so many different places. And one of the things that I have a couple of questions, but we can start with like, what are the things that you've seen impacting fertility, like specifically?
Yeah, the things that impact fertility, obviously the first one comes into mind, and also is what we're testing
BPA.
is hormone disrupting chemicals. Yes, BPA is one of them. They're
Hmm.
also called endocrine disrupting chemicals, just meaning these chemicals are synthetic chemicals that actually mess with your hormones.
Hmm.
And oftentimes I always like go back a step to explain why hormone is really important.
Hmm.
Hormone literally like kind of like governs every bodily function of you or any human, from metabolism to mood to sleep. Everything is kind of like controlled by a hormone, and they act in such tiny amount. Think about one drop of water in 25 size Olympic swimming pool. That's how much you require for the hormone to actually have an impact on your body. So they're like act at super tiny amount. And they also works in kind of like a lock and key. So once your hormone comes in, they go to a receptor and they lock, and they fall into a mold, kind of like a Lego.
Hmm.
So then if you have a foreign substance and coming intervening, and then your lock and key just doesn't work anymore, then it'll
Right.
have a whole slew of downstream impact. And this is why like hormone is really important. And then these synthetic chemicals, they mess with your hormone. That means they make this lock and key function doesn't work. Then you
Hmm.
have a lot of the downstream impact. And as you mentioned, some of the chemical BPA, that's like the poster child of a
Yes.
hormone disrupting chemical that actually got banned thanks to conscious mothers who demanded that BPA needs to be banned from their kids' bottles and
Yeah.
sippy cups, and that's how BPA got banned.
Hmm.
But the interesting thing is that once BPA got banned, it didn't get banned as a bisphenol as a whole class.
Hmm.
So industry started using alternatives. So
Right.
now people might have heard BPS, BPF. They can literally swapping out one atom and then
Right.
change from BPA all the way to BPZ. And now I've seen like also combos. There's like BPAF and BZ or whatever. Like it's just like really crazy. And the scientists have been finding out that these alternatives are actually much worse than BPA.
Oh, geez. I've always said that because if it says BPA plastic, I'm just like plastic in general.
Yes.
Like just,
Yes.
they only discovered one part and they're only shining the light on that one part, but like you're still getting a material that leaches
Right.
into food. So it's just best to avoid it altogether.
Right. So yeah, one tip that we tell our users to first step to start detoxing is get rid of as much plastic as you can in your life, because
Hmm.
we have this really complicated relationship with plastic. We
We
can
do.
never completely
It's the
100% getting rid of
convenience
them.
of it. Yeah.
It's exactly so convenient, and then it's actually really useful.
Hmm.
But considering the leaching, the impact on human health and the impact on the environment, we should definitely eliminate the
True.
use.
Totally. And one question I actually had for you, since we're talking about chemicals in general, like, so what do people do for water? A lot of people buy plastic bottles.
Oh,
And
yes.
also, so what is your best suggestion for water?
My best suggestion for water is use tap water, but
Hmm.
get a filter.
Okay.
That's the safest way. So, I mean, if you really want to do this systematically, the best way is figure out what's in your water first. There
Hmm.
is actually a company who can that can test your water. It's called Simple Lab.
Hmm.
They're actually based in Berkeley. I knew them, and they do pretty comprehensive water testing.
Hmm.
The only issue is that water testing is also pretty expensive. So it's
Hmm.
almost as expensive. It could be as expensive as a reverse osmosis water filter. So for
Hmm.
some people, reverse osmosis water filter is kind of like catch the all
Hmm.
filter. So if you don't have the energy or don't want to spend the money to do the testing, then go ahead. If you can't afford it, get a reverse osmosis water filter.
Hmm.
They're usually like you can install them under the sink,
Hmm.
and they usually last for like a while. But
Hmm.
do make sure that you change the filter once in a while. Otherwise, it just wouldn't work.
Okay, got it.
And if you tend to get bottled water, like we really encourage that because they do leach. And I
Yep.
oftentimes see people buy this whole package of a plastic water bottle from Costco and
Yeah,
then leave them in their car
I know.
in
Well,
hot weather. I'm just like,
yeah,
oh man, like please don't
it's,
do that.
you know what? Not even that. Like, we have no idea like what happened between the manufacturing to Costco. Like, was it on a hot truck? Where
Exactly.
did it go? Like, who? Nobody's babysitting these bottles, like, and making sure that they're not in this heat. I've seen, people buy them and they're all like crinkled up. Why are they crinkled
Oh
up?
yes.
Like, what like caused that? So, I mean, there's so many like different things that happen in between, and just the bottom line is plastic leaches by nature. Also, are there alternatives or companies that you like that people can get, whether it's like paper containers or certain glass containers that you've seen that people can, at least when they're traveling, can use?
Yes, yes. We actually did quite a bit of homework by curating a list of product. So if people
Mm-hmm.
are interested, they can go to our website, go to
Mm-hmm.
resources, and we have a list of approved
Oh, that's
product.
awesome. Yeah.
We actually contacted the manufacturers to make sure the bottle is well made, is clean.
Mm-hmm.
So people can find that list on our website. If you're interested in getting a water filter, we also have a list of water filter that you can check it out, that we have contacted the manufacturer. We make sure that the water filter will do what it's supposed to do,
Fantastic.
so you don't have to do the homework.
Fantastic. That's awesome. And then, interestingly enough, I just had a conversation with one of my cousins, and she had strawberries and they weren't organic. And I'm like, that's like one of the dirty dozen. She's like, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in this.
Oh,
Some people have this, like, I don't believe in the pesticides in food. So, since you studied this, can we talk about that?
yes. Okay. People should worry about pesticides.
Yeah.
There are actually multiple categories of pesticides. There are more persistent, kind of like a chemical pesticides. So one that's people are familiar that's being banned is DDT. DDT has been banned, since like the 1970s, 80s. However, if you actually test for people's blood today, you will still find DDT in it. So we call these
Wow.
persistent chemicals. So they just live, because they have like such a long half-life. They just live in your body for a long time. And
So
many
now, is
times
persistent chemicals the same as forever chemicals?
so forever chemical they used to describe PFAS, this forever chemical. So PFAS is a persistent chemical.
Okay.
Um, I guess you can kind of say they're kind of forever chemical because they just last a long time. They will stay in your body for a long time.
Mhm.
So for persistent chemicals, many times there's not much we can do about it once we get exposed to them.
Mhm.
That's why we wanted people to pay extra attention on the transient chemicals, because
Mhm.
that's something that you can actually control.
Mhm.
So there's a class of pesticides is also more of a transient kind of pesticides. That's why we want people to eat organic as much as possible.
Yeah.
If the organic is out of your budget, then trying to pick, even organic like frozen veggies or fruits, that's better than the inorganic one.
Yeah.
I think the EWG, Environmental Working Group, you mentioned Dirty Dozen, Clean Dozen. I think they're doing a really good job translating the importance and the science from this aspect. So the general rule of thumb is that anything without skin, like try to eat organic, because at least if there's the skin, you can peel the skin off and, there's some kind of protection there.
But although bananas are the ones that are kind of tricky, because they do have skin, but they're actually one of the dirty dozen, aren't they? Usually.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
but I mean, but as a rule of thumb.
Yeah, as a rule of thumb, but I would always recommend if you can choose organic. I mean, even for banana, like if you go to Costco, Costco is like my favorite store.
Yeah, it's great.
Buy organic nowadays is actually much cheaper in Costco, and then like a dozen of banana costs like $2. That's actually not bad at all. So we would always recommend that. Yes, strawberry is one of the most contaminated berry in general. Is like the most contaminated one. And then for green veggies, always watch out for spinach and kale. So spinach and kale are also the most polluted green leafy veggie, and especially people consume them as salad. So so you're going to get a lot of like pesticide exposure. If you don't have the resource or don't have, not close by a place that sells organic, oftentimes some research, not a lot of research, not super strong evidence, but some like small studies have shown if you actually soak your veggie a bit and then wash it multiple times, that can also help remove some of the pesticides.
Yeah, for sure. I find also like the gluten, a lot of people are sensitive to gluten, and I think that some of it might be like just food sensitivity to gluten, but I feel like it's because of the pesticides and the sprays that they do, the glyphosate.
I feel like they all connected. It's probably not to like just say all glutens are bad. But I think like certain glutens are probably worse than others. And then because, we have all these we use all these pesticides, and then, glyphosate is one of them. And we also, there's also like, other pesticides have heavy metal in them that also counts. And then also with the whole GMO stuff, it just like, it's just really hard to say whether gluten is the culprit.
Right.
But if you do have the sensitivity, then, try to avoid it.
Yeah, for sure. And then my other question was, what are your thoughts on things like zeolite, bentonite clay that actually absorb the toxins, and can they help with some of the persistent toxins?
I think there's like a limited study showing that these things actually work. But I think the issue is that because there's not enough evidence, I would caution people to use it under the guidance of a healthcare professional, like a functional medicine doctor and someone who have done this. Because if you use that, even if you say getting rid of some toxins, you might accumulate others. So they might just work for some, but not work for others. So I would highly suggest, if you do those kind of protocol, work with someone who have done it. The other thing is also the sources of all of these minerals is also quite important, because oftentimes they also coexist with heavy metals. So especially for clay. So you might be thinking you're getting rid of some of the toxins, but then you actually also exposing yourself to additional, like a different type of toxin. So that's also something to keep in mind.
Yeah, for sure. And then you talked about food, rice you studied specifically.
Yes.
So let's talk about that. Is it all rice, or is it specific types of rice that you found have chemicals?
So when I did that study, I was actually doing my dissertation in China at the time, and I ended up testing a bunch of rice. The interesting for that we found out over there is because the regulation over there is not as good as in the US, we actually found more green, like green labeled so-called organic rice actually had way more pesticides and toxin, like heavy metal arsenic particularly, than the actual conventional not labeled
my gosh.
rice, which
Wow.
was a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
But for here, yes, arsenic is actually naturally occurring in soil. The arsenic can be also found in pesticides. So that's like a one concern. But depending on the location where the rice is grown, their level could also be different. So one thing to consider if you do eat a lot of rice is that soaking definitely help. So soaking and washing the rice, wash it at least 3 times before you cook it. That generally helps to remove some of the arsenic.
Good to hear. And also, what about basmati rice? Have you ever looked into that?
I think basmati rice in general has less arsenic than, the white rice or the brown rice. But that's, as a rule of thumb, yeah, definitely like wash the rice multiple times.
We talked about like also the different chemicals that can be found, why endocrine disruptors. Like, what other places can people have endocrine disruptors that they're not even aware of?
Oh, yeah. So one thing always surprise people, you knew this already, is the thermal receipt, BPA, where all the bisphenols are coated on thermal receipt. That's like a hidden place. People don't really think about it.
Yes.
And then your skin actually absorb a lot of these through your skin oil and then penetrate it through your skin. So if you don't have to touch receipt, don't touch receipt. If you do have to touch receipt, make sure you wash your hands after.
It drives me crazy because my daughter has this app where she wants to take pictures of the receipt, and I'm like, don't touch it. I don't want you touching it. And then she'll like touch the edge of it, but it doesn't matter. The whole thing, right? The whole thing, or is it just the print or like where the?
It's the whole thing. It's coated in the paper too. The ink will also have it. So So like if you can actually move your nail across the receipt and actually make a mark, for sure that's like coated. So yeah, if you don't have to touch it, don't touch it. That's like a hidden place. I think a lot of people are not aware, but this is really simple. Once you know it is sticking to your head and you don't have to worry about it the next time. Another hidden place I would say for a different class of chemical is phthalates. That's also something that people are not aware. There are 2 kinds of phthalate. One, we call it low molecular weight phthalate. One is high molecular weight phthalates. In general, phthalates are used as plasticizers. They're also used in a lot of personal care product. So if you do eat out a lot using takeout containers, not only you would have the BPA exposure, you could also have the phthalate exposure. So, if you don't have to eat out, or if you can eat out, with your own container, that's generally better than, having, hot food in a plastic container.
Oh, I know. It drives me crazy. Because my kids sometimes they want to order. And so I've started calling them and say, please put the warm things in paper containers because I don't want it in plastic. I mean, literally the plastic, you almost feel like it's going to melt. It softens.
Yes.
With the food in there, I'm like, it drives me crazy.
Yeah, that's actually kind of like scary. So that's like a one thing where you would get like phthalate exposure. Another one, obviously, is personal care product. We always tell people to ditch anything labeled fragrance because fragrance is kind of like the secret code for phthalates. Phthalates is the additive adding fragrance that makes the smell actually stick on your body for a lot longer. So it's also a hormone disrupting chemical. Phthalates are also especially bad for boys because we're pregnant women who are pregnant with boys because they're like actually blocks the androgens pathway. So there's like a ton of issues associated with phthalates and male fertility too.
Wow.
So phthalates is something to pay attention and ditch the fragrance. So one tip we often tell users is like, be a conscious shopper and read product labels. So that's like pretty easy to recognize. You flip over your shampoo bottle or any personal care product you're using, just look for fragrance. If there's a fragrance labeled, ditch that product.
Yeah, and they have natural fragrances too, like a detox market. There's alternatives.
Yes, alternatives are better, but also pay attention on where that alternative is coming from, because we have also seen when people test for essential oils, depending on where that essential oil is made, if they're not made in food grade equipment to distill that essential oil, if that equipment is, say, not stainless steel, they use like plastic pipe, for example, with that
Right.
hot oil, then stuff will still leach into it. So just
Yes,
as,
that's a good point.
just to be cautious, even with natural fragrance, if you can go for fragrance free, that's the best. And then we now found out that, because we do, like, for the test that we offer, we also ask people to, to let us know what their products they're using. So we actually do a pretty comprehensive product audit. So we audit out not only these like harmful chemicals that we test, but any other ingredients that's problematic. We also audit it out. We also let people know, hey, this is problematic. So from what we have seen is even when people trying to choose fragrance-free product, often now we have seen manufacturers use, instead of using fragrance, they use aroma as one of the ingredients. So it's like very deceiving, right?
Oh, and God. They get around everything.
Exactly. Or they will use labeling as, unscented. But apparently unscented is actually a scent that could also have fragrance.
Really? Oh my gosh. Wow. See, I'm learning stuff, and I thought I knew a lot. So another question that I had was deodorant. That's a big one because a lot of them have aluminum. Are there brands or types that you've seen? I know the crystal ones. There's the liquid crystal. What are your thoughts on the different types?
We also have a list because deodorant is one
and this
that
is on
people
your
use
website?
Pretty often. It's also on our website, same as a water filter. So we did a lot of homework on that. So we have shampoo, conditioner, body lotion, oil, soap. Deodorant is a big category because you use quite a bit, especially in the summer. So that's a category. We have a list of their product there that's without aluminum and making sure it's like safe. So people can definitely check it out.
Okay, awesome. And then sulfites, that's another thing because you were mentioning shampoo.
Yes. Sulfate is something that a lot of these like kind of surfactants and then, making oil and water mixed together or making it foamy that we actually have the feeling of like it's actually cleaning.
Toothpaste too to make it kind of,
Exactly. So those are oftentimes could be contaminated with a carcinogen called dioxin. So that's why we also want to avoid those. And then not just that, but also any petroleum-based product or ingredients. And those are generally fairly easy to recognize. So sulfate, you can obviously recognize sulfate, but any other kind of like a capitalized letters like in your ingredient list, like PPG, PEG, EDTA, all of these are petroleum-based ingredients. And then whenever it's petroleum-based ingredients, you always have the issue of contamination of the carcinogen. So that's why we also have people avoid those.
Wow, it's there's so much. And it can seem overwhelming, but like you said, with the receipts, once you know it, you just know it. And there are also different places or resources that that have clean products, but I love the fact that you guys have a list that you've done as well. I'll definitely be checking that out for myself and the kids.
Yeah, we're just hoping this process is not as daunting as it seems like, because if you think about like where your exposures are coming from in terms of like, just from product, think about which product you use the most often and then in a large amount. If you like use like your face serum, you don't use that much, right?
Right.
So compared to say shampoo, if you actually wash your hair every single day and then you use big blob of shampoo, then that's a product that if it's problematic, you should probably swap it out because your exposure levels are a lot higher from that product.
Right. And also, I'd like to talk about parabens because there's always conflicting.
Oh, yes.
There's always conflicting research, which sometimes is skewed towards another, agenda. So I wanted to get your take on that.
I think people should avoid paraben. Paraben has been shown to be a hormone disrupting chemicals. And however, paraben is usually using personal care product or over the counter ornament as antimicrobial. So they're like pretty efficient at, decreasing microbial and then all these things. And the dermatologists also have shown, they're saying that, paraben seems to cause less allergy than, some of the natural preservatives. But I think this is up to debate. To me, I think the hormone disruption is way worse than having allergy.
Yeah.
And then your skin cells change all the time. And then, your skin might actually adapt to a natural kind of ingredient rather than paraben.
Yeah.
So I would still caution people, if you see paraben, ditch that. And also not all parabens are created equal. So sometimes it will be labeled just as paraben, but sometimes the label will actually say which kind of paraben it is. So paraben, depending on the length of the molecule, they could be methyl, meaning one carbon chain, methyl, ethyl, propyl, and butyl, just like 1, 2, 3, 4. So just remember, butyl is the worst.
Okay.
So in terms of toxicity,
methyl would be, the
methyl
least
is the
harm.
least harm.
Yeah.
They're all harmful, but if you see butyl versus like a methyl, oh my God, ditch the butyl because it's very, very toxic.
Yeah.
And another place I think paraben is a bit hard to avoid is, so far we have not been able to find any really clean over-the-counter ornament or cream. So many people that we have seen use these 1% hydrocortisol cream for rashes or for other things. Across the board, every single like hydrocortisol cream we have seen included paraben. So for those, if you do have to use it with caution. If you don't have to use it, don't use it. Just don't use it for excessive amount of time because you're getting that exposure.
Right. So if you use it once in a while, it's not going to be as bad as obviously doing it daily.
Exactly. Another hidden place for paraben, which is also very, very interesting, is paraben also have been used as a preservative in packaged food.
I know.
That's another caution.
I've noticed it in my dog's cleaner. There's a lot of, I know they put it. It's crazy everywhere.
Yeah. So for packaged food, paraben is actually not labeled as paraben. It's actually labeled as hydroxybenzoic acid. So it's like even harder for people to recognize. So if you do buy packaged food, trying to find the ingredients you can actually recognize, the least the ingredients, the better. Whenever are these long chemical names, like if you can ditch them.
Yeah, wow, it's crazy. They're like everywhere.
They are everywhere. That's why I was like, okay, let's not get too overwhelmed. Do what you can.
Yeah, and then let me ask you a question, like, what are things that people can do to really help the body eliminate any excess toxins? Is there something that somebody can do just to be proactive about that?
Yes. I think the 3 thing that works well, but it does take time and also does take effort. One is exercise. That definitely help. That I mean, not so much to do with nutrition, but they're going hand in hand. Is by sweating, you actually get rid of toxin. So we have seen people who exercise more with lower toxin levels. So exercise, sweating is definitely a good thing. The second is antioxidants always help. And where does antioxidant coming from? And obviously like fruits and veggies rich in antioxidants. So definitely consume more fruit and veggie organic if you can to have that antioxidant. You can also take some supplement too. So vitamin B complex have been shown to reduce, so particularly on air pollution exposure.
That's great.
It's also a pretty powerful antioxidant. So you can also take these ones are like so far have been shown to help with detox. And I also know functional medicine doctors also recommend sauna. There are studies have shown that sauna definitely help. But again, it's the sweating. By sweating it out, you get rid of it.
That's great. Oh, it's good information. And then as far as what you offer with your company, how does that work? How does the testing work and how do you administer it? Like, how do people do it?
Yeah, so people can simply just buy a test kit online through our website. And then we do ask you to fill out an exposure survey before you submit your sample, because this helps us actually better tailor the recommendations for you and help you really pinpoint where your exposures are coming from. It's a bit of work, but this is actually where we spend most of the time doing the audit, because right now this process is still fairly manual. So we ask about your diet, what you have consumed, utensil you use, and we ask you all the products that you're using, from household product to personal care product to cleaning products. We ask for all of them. Then we ask you to ship us your urine sample first thing in the morning. We get your urine analyzed. We analyze 13 chemical metabolites, including BPA alternative BPS, BPF, 5 of the phthalates, 4 parabens, as well as oxybenzone. So oxybenzone is it's a sunblock agent, UV blocker, that has also been shown to be hormone disrupting in a lot of the sunscreens. So we also screen for that. And you get a report back after we finish analyzing your report and doing your lifestyle analysis. In the report, you would know your levels, how you compare with our users, and also the national average, and exactly what you can do to reduce these levels. And at the end of the report, we also gave you that product audit. As I mentioned before, we will audit out any problematic ingredients, not only the ones that we test, but also any other problematic one that we have seen there's any health impact. We'll let you know. So then you can get educated. Next time you buy a product, you replenish your products, buy a better one.
That's fantastic. So yeah, it's not just the testing, but you actually give people tools or like a how-to moving forward, an action plan.
Exactly. We're hoping the testing just like sort of get you, get you in the door so you understand what's inside of you. Then you can actually take actions, because sometimes also when people don't fill out exposure survey, you just like it's hard to know where your exposures are coming from. And then also by filling out exposure survey, you can also understand, have like a snapshot of your own metabolism. Because we have seen folks, I mean, this is like the research is not there yet to actually give people additional insights in terms of their metabolism and their physiology. But what we have seen is people are different. Everybody's built different. Some people metabolize slower, some people metabolize faster for these toxins. But what we have seen is based on people's exposure profile, some people don't detox as fast as others.
Right.
So if you know that you don't detox as fast, then by all means, you should not be putting the extra toxin into your body.
Yeah. Totally. And let me ask you a question, because there are certain people that do not sweat easily. Are those some of the reasons why people wouldn't detox as easily?
I think that for just fun sweat is hard to say.
Right, because it's
there
just
isn't
one.
really exactly, that's like a one aspect of it. And we think eventually we will probably have some kind of genetic testing to can let people know, okay, do you detox well or do you not? But that's not for prime time yet. We actually don't know. But at least from what we so far, all the users we have tested, what we have seen is for some people, if they have like a low tox, if they have a fund their lifestyle behavior, they didn't expose themselves like that much, and then they're on that much toxin coming out. Great. Or if you expose to yourself a lot and a lot of toxin comes out of your metabolites through your urine, that's also a good thing, because one matches with another, right? Like low comes in, low comes out, and then high comes in, high comes out, which is good. But we have seen some people, they have a pretty high lifestyle, like a high toxic lifestyle. They have a lot of exposure, but their urine levels are low, like from these toxins. This is like the population that's like really worrisome, especially considering if this person doesn't exercise, doesn't do anything else. This is the group of people we're actually worried about. Not that, they see they have like, a high tox profile based on the products and lifestyle they're practicing. And they think, there's not much toxin in my urine, I don't have to worry about it. No, this is the group that you really have to worry about, because if it doesn't come out of your urine, where did it go?
Right. It's so true. And you'd need to get that survey, like a really complete survey in order to figure that out.
Exactly.
Yeah. So very fascinating. And so now you're going to go into eventually doing genetic testing as well. But like you were saying, the whole idea is that genetic is only a small percentage of what really ends up being activated in your body, and the environment is what really shifts that.
Exactly. There was like a one quote by this professor from UC Davis, and then she always says um, genetic loads the gun, but environment pulls the trigger. So I
Yeah,
thought that's
that's good.
a
That is
really
really
great
good.
description because yeah, you might have some genetic predisposition, but if your environment doesn't pull that trigger, it might not ever activate.
What's
So your
interesting,
environment is so important.
it is so important. What's interesting too is that you could look at families and then when you look at families, it makes you think that it's because of just genetics. But what people don't consider is they grew up in the same house, they had the same food, you know, there's
Right,
so many other things that are the same that are not just genetic that can impact what ends up
right.
being expressed.
Right. This also makes stress management really important too, because this also obviously works together. You don't want your body to be stressed, and if your body is stressed mentally and physically, that's not going to be good for detoxing.
No, for sure. And you've heard of Bruce Lipton, right? Dr. Bruce Lipton.
Mm-hmm.
He's so interesting, but he talks just about that, about genetics and how he's taken a bunch of stem cells that came from had the same genetic makeup and given them different petri dishes with different environments. But he also talks about the stress
Mm-hmm.
hormones and our own petri dish, which is our blood.
Yes.
So it's very
Yes.
interesting.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely amazing information. I could definitely pick your brain for hours, but we just don't have that time. But it's so interesting. It's really fascinating topics. I'm excited to go and look on your website. I definitely think it's a great resource to be able to see at least what you think about the different products. And if people do want to reach out and find you and look into these testing kits, where can they find that?
They can find us on our website. It's www.millionmarker.com, and people can sign up for our newsletter. We send out monthly newsletter to let you know the news or any trends in toxin and how to avoid
It's great.
toxin. We're pretty active on social media. People can find us on Instagram and Twitter,
Hmm.
because education is also one of the mission for the company.
Hmm.
So we want to get everybody educated on what to avoid and around your environment, so then you can
Hmm.
actually do something about it. So that's our mission. So we generate a lot of material around education.
Hmm.
We recently also, not so long ago, we have published particularly a hub for pregnancy and fertility. There are
Hmm.
over like 80 articles there, because we also see there's like a huge gap in some science translation. So we have all these researchers generating all these scientific papers, but the knowledge is not really, you know, spreaded or disseminated to the public.
Yeah.
And that's like a very important to us because, as you mentioned, a lot of people, yeah, you might just know BPA, but most of the people know BPA and then know BPA is bad for you because their label is their water bottle is labeled BPA free.
Yep.
But there are so many other things out there people just don't know, whereas we already have like decades of scientific research showing these things are actually harmful. So we
Yes.
really want to spread that message to make sure people are equipped with that knowledge so that
Hmm.
you can actually live a better lifestyle.
I love it. I think this is just so important, and I really appreciate you, Jenna, for coming on today to talk about this.
Thank you so much for having me.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.